Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest update for the PPP loan. So last week, the SBA came out with additional guidance that will help us or help you guys figure out how to calculate your PPP loan allowance. In addition to that, they provided additional information letting us know the types of documentation that is needed to calculate the loan and also the type of documentation needed to forgive the loan. So for this particular guidance, I am specifically referring to anybody who is a booth renter, independent contractors, and salons that have no employees. Now, when I say no employees, I'm talking about you, if your salon is a booth rental salon and you don't pay anyone. Now, if you have a commission salon and you pay your workers as independent contractors, in other words, you pay them, you don't take out any taxes from their income. In addition to that, you give them a 1099 at the end of the year. I'm talking to you. Your salon is considered a salon with no employees. The only way that your salon could be considered a salon with employees if they are on commission is if you're paying them with a W-2. So if you're not paying them with a W-2, that means that you own a hair salon with no employees, and this update is for you. So let's first start out by determining who is eligible for the PPP loan. Okay, so to be eligible for the PPP loan, there are a couple of items a couple of check boxes that you have to mark. One is your business must have been in operation on February 15th, 2020. In addition to that, you must have filed or will file a Form 1040 Schedule C for 2019. Now remember, before this clarification, they were saying that we could use 2018's profit and loss statement to determine what our PPP loan is going to be. But that has been clarified, and as it stands, you have to have filed or you intend to file a 1040 Schedule C for 2019. However, in order to calculate the loan, you have to have at least prepared your Schedule C for 2019. Okay, so if the net income on your Schedule C is zero or less, you are not eligible for the PPP loan. So what this means is after you calculate your income and your expenses, and once it is moved to your Schedule C, if you have zero income or if you had a loss for 2019, you're not eligible for the PPP loan, which means you won't be getting anything. Okay, now calculating the loan amount for self-employed. Now, prior to this clarification, there was a little bit of confusion how the SBA wanted us to calculate the loan amount for self-employed individuals. Now, for individuals who had a business and who paid employees, the calculation was pretty much straightforward. But for self-employed individuals, the calculation was not straightforward. Well, they've now come out and they have clarified that. And so this is how it looks. So what they're going to do is they're going to look at your 1040 Form Schedule C, line 31. Now remember, this has to be your 2019 Schedule C. So once again, if you have not filed your return, you want to at least prepare your 2019 tax return so you can see what that amount is on Schedule C, line 31. Keep in mind that if that amount is over $100,000, you have to reduce it to $100,000 because the calculation is we're not allowed to use more than $100,000 to calculate each individual's loan amount. So if it's over $100,000, you're going to reduce it to $100,000. Then you're going to divide whatever amount is on line 31, you're going to divide it by 12, and that's going to give you your average monthly income for 2019. Once you've determined your average monthly income for 2019, you're going to multiply that amount by 2.5. And the result is going to be your loan amount. Say, for example, if the amount on line 31, which is your net income, is $100,000, your loan amount is going to be $20,833. And how that is calculated is you take the $100,000, you divide it by 12, and then whatever the result is, you multiply it by 2.5, and that gives you the $20,833. So that is what is going to be your loan amount. Okay. Now, what are the required PPP loan documentations? So in order for you to even apply for the PPP loan, there are certain documentations that are required. Prior to this clarification by the SBA, the information as to the type of documentation needed for PPP loans for self-employed individuals wasn't very clear. So banks were making assumptions based upon what they thought. Well, it has now since been clarified. So if you are intending to apply for the PPP loan, you have to have your 2019 Form 1040 Schedule C, regardless of whether or not your 2019 tax return was actually filed. That's number one. Number two, you have to have your 2019 IRS Form 1099 miscellaneous showing non-employee compensation received in Box 7. So if you are an independent contractor, more than likely you received a 1099 miscellaneous from the person that you work for. For example, if you work in a hair salon where you are a commissioned stylist and the salon provides you with a Form 1099 miscellaneous, you have to have that available. And line 7 is where the non-employee compensation shows up. So you have to have your 1099 showing how much you were paid in 2019. Now, if you are a self-employed individual and you don't have a 1099, then you don't have to worry about it. You're just going to deal with whatever income that you received, okay? Number 3, you don't really have to have invoices, but these are some of the documents that they will accept, okay? Invoices, bank statements, or bookkeeping records that establish self-employment. Okay, so if you're a self-employed individual and maybe you don't keep your bookkeeping records, then they want to see bank statements. They want to see invoices proving that you have billed someone for a service that you offered. Or looking at your bookkeeping records, so if you keep your books with QuickBooks Self-Employed or QuickBooks Online, they would like to see your profit and loss statement showing your income and your expenses. Now also, there's one other thing has also been added to this, and it says that applicants are also required to provide 2020 invoices, bank statements, or bookkeeping records to establish that you were in business in 2020. So in addition to providing your 2019 bank statements and bookkeeping records and possibly invoices, you're also required to provide the same items for 2020 to prove that you were in business in 2020. So for those of you that don't have a bookkeeping system, now is the time to think about maybe implementing a bookkeeping system in your business. Because even if you are a booth renter, you still need to track your income and expenses, just like a large corporation or a large business will. Because in order for you to understand what's going on with your business, and in order for you to make intelligent business decisions with your eyes wide open, you have to know your numbers. Because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. So it's important that we use this opportunity to get into good habits and get into the habit of maintaining your books. Now, keep in mind that all of these items may not necessarily be required by the loan officer. It could just be a combination of the items. For example, your Schedule C, 1040 Schedule C will probably be compared to the bookkeeping records that you provide the loan officer. So they want to see exactly how much money you brought in. And in order for them to determine how much money you brought in, they have to look at invoices, they have to look at bank statements, and they may have to look at your bookkeeping records that establish self-employment. Now, if you have bookkeeping records, in other words, if you keep your books, then the bank statements and invoices are probably going to be null and void, because they're going to compare the invoices, bank statements, and bookkeeping information, whichever one you provide, to what you actually claimed on your Schedule C. So by looking at those two, then they will be comfortable that this is exactly how much you made, because at the end of the day, your bookkeeping information can say whatever you want it to say, okay? Your bank statements, on the other hand, are going to be more truthful and more honest, because the only money that's going to be in there is money that you were paid. Invoices can say anything that you want them to say. You can make those up. Now, usually what you claim on your tax return is normally true because nobody wants to pay more taxes than they have to pay. So in order for the loan officers to be comfortable with the amount that you say you're making, they will need to look at your tax return and look at some other form of outside documentation, bank statement, bookkeeping, or invoices, so that way they can make the determination as to whether or not you are being truthful about how much money you actually made. Okay. Next, it is, what are the loan proceeds that you receive? What can they be used for? So they can be used for, if you're self-employed or if you are an independent contractor, they can be used to pay yourself. So owner's compensation. And the way that's determined, once again, is by looking at your tax return, Schedule C, line 31, to determine how much you are supposed to pay yourself based on how much you paid yourself in 2019. If you happen to be a salon owner, and therefore you have rent that you have to pay to your landlord, or if you own the building and you pay mortgage, the interest portion of the mortgage, and if you're having to pay utilities while you are out and not working, those are the items that you can use the loan proceeds for. Now, I've been asked the question, as a booth renter, can you also pay for your booth rent? And if you pay for your booth rent, is that will that portion of the loan be forgiven? Well, if I think about it logically, and based upon what the ruling says or what the clarification says, it says that if you're paying rent for your business, if there is some official documentation in place showing that you are required to pay rent, then my assumption is, yes, that portion that you use to pay your booth rent can also be part of what is forgiven. Now, keep in mind that the only things that will be forgiven are items that are claimed on your Schedule C. So if your booth rent is claimed on your Schedule C, which it should be, because if you're paying it, you want to make sure you're also deducting it from your income, so you're not paying tax on too much income, then yes, I don't see why it won't be part of what's forgiven, because it is part of your expenses. And the whole idea is that if you're paying your booth rent to your landlord can in turn pay their rent to the landlord of the building. Okay. The next thing is the PPP loan forgiveness amount. So how much of this loan is going to be forgiven? So let's say you received the $20,833. The question now becomes, how much of that is forgiven? Okay, so owner's compensation replacement. So that means paying yourself based upon your 2019 Schedule C, limited for an 8-week period. So what you pay yourself based upon your net income from your 2019 is forgiven for an 8-week period. So how do you calculate that? So for example, if you made $100,000 in 2019, the maximum amount of forgiveness for your compensation is going to be $15,385. And the way that's calculated is you take the $100,000 and you divide it by 52, because we have 52 weeks in a year. So you're dividing that by 52. And only 8 weeks worth of payments are forgiven. So you have to divide that by 52 and then divide the result by 8. You multiply the result by 8. So the result of $100,000 divided by 52 times 8 is $15,385. So that is the dollar amount that is going to be forgiven for your owner's compensation. Now, let's assume that you do make $100,000. That means that you received $20,833 for your loan amount. Well, out of that loan amount, $15,385 is going to be forgiven. if you, I mean, for compensation purposes, which means you're left with an additional $5,448.33. So in order for that portion, in order for the $5,448 to be forgiven, you have to use that amount for either mortgage interest, if you own the building, for rent, or for utilities. Once again, these expenses, which is your interest, your rent, and your utilities, has to also be claimed as on your Schedule C as part of your deductions. So if these expenses appear on your Schedule C as part of your deduction, you will be forgiven the entire amount. So just to sort of recap, so the amount of money that you're getting for the PPP loan has to be used for pretty much 4 main items. 1 is to pay yourself, your owner's compensation. 2 is to cover any rent you have to pay. If you're a booth renter, that would include rent to your salon owner, and cover utilities. When as a booth renter, you're not going to be able to pay, you don't have utilities, because your utilities is pretty much included in the rent that you pay. So really, when it comes to the mortgage interest cost and when it comes to utilities, that's more or less for an individual who is renting a space, whether you're renting a salon suite or you're renting an actual building. Okay, so what type of paperwork is required in order for the loan to be forgiven if you are self-employed or if you are an independent contractor? So now I'm just going to throw this one in there. If you happen to have employees, now this particular update that I'm giving right now it does not refer to salons that have employees. However, if you do have employees, you have to provide your 941, which is your payroll tax return, and any form that shows your state unemployment insurance payments. And the only reason why I bring it up in this context is because people have been asking me, I have commission stylists, can I include them as part of my employees when I am applying for the PPP loan? And I keep telling them the answer to that question is no, because the 941s only include true employees. They have to be employees in order for them to be even on the 941. So if part of what is required for the forgiveness is the 941s, that in and of itself tells you that commission stylists that you pay as independent contractors are not and should not be part of the loan calculation. Okay. Now, if you are self-employed, if you are a salon owner that has no employees, if you are an independent contractor, you have to show the following: the evidence of business rent. So for those of you that are booth renters, you want to make sure you're getting receipts from you're getting sales receipts from the salon owner showing that you paid rent. Business mortgage interest payments for those of you that own the building, and business utilities for the covered period, which is 8 weeks. So keep in mind that this period only covers 8 weeks. So all of the forgiveness money has to be spent within an 8-week time period. Also, if you are a Schedule C filer, you are going to have to show your schedule sheets. If you're a Schedule C filer and you're paying yourself compensation, okay, you're going to have to show your Schedule C, or rather your Schedule C is going to be used to determine the amount of net profit allocated to you for the 8 weeks covered period. And the reason why I say this particular one is interesting to me, and I say that because as self-employed individuals, okay, when we pay ourselves, it doesn't show up on our Schedule C. We are not allowed to deduct what we pay ourselves. It doesn't work that way. So it's interesting that they're saying that they want to see your Schedule C, or rather your Schedule C is going to be used to determine the amount of net profit allocated to you. So what this tells me is that what they're going to do is they're going to look at your Schedule C, which is going to have your net income. So let's assume that your net income on your Schedule C says $31,000. Okay. they're going to then look to see how much you actually paid yourself. They're going to want to see your draws. How much did this individual draw in whatever year they're looking at or whatever period they're looking at? So when you compare what your net income was on Schedule C, line 31, to how much you drew, the amount that you drew out has to equal your net income or be less than your net income. Because what that does is it tells us that, okay, there's a possibility that you may have drawn the entire amount of your net income. But keep in mind that your net income is never always going to be the same as your draw. And the reason is because let's assume in 2019 you only made $4,000 as net income. Well, of course, it's going to cost you more than $4,000 to live, but you only made $4,000. But somehow you were able to pay your entire rent, your car note, and all other bills. And let's say your bills for that particular year came to, say, $30,000. Okay, well, your net income was $4,000, but you paid bills of $30,000. So what that tells me is that you had additional cash flow. So you may have had additional cash flow of $26,000 sitting in your bank where you were still able to cover your bills even though your net income was only $4,000. So that explains to me the reason why they want to look at your Schedule C to determine how much you allocated to yourself in the year that they're looking at. That's the only way that it makes sense, because once again, what we pay ourselves as independent contractors, as self-employed individuals, never ever shows up on Schedule C. Okay? Okay, well, so that's pretty much it. Those are the most current updates. And what I will do is, if there are any further updates, which I'm quite sure there are going to be additional updates because this thing is constantly changing. If there are any additional updates, I will definitely come back and let you know what the latest updates are. But for now, this is what it is. Now, you all know that the SBA ran out of money. I think it was, sometime last week. Yes, but Congress is in session and they are trying to come up with another plan that will put out another round of funds to help fund the PPP loans. So while Congress is fighting about that, it's time for you guys to go and start filling out your PPP forms, or at least getting all the documentation together. So that way, when the funds are available, you're going to be ready to start filing. Okay, because remember, there is a deadline here. So far, the deadline is June 30th. You have to have filed by June 30th in order for you to be able to collect this money. Now, that June 30th deadline, they may push it out further, or they may tell us in a couple of weeks that the money has run out again. So before June 30th, I don't know. But for right now, it is June 30th. So you need to get out there, get your paperwork together. So when the money becomes available again, you will be ready to go ahead and file your PPP loan with your bank. Thanks again, guys, for taking the time to watch my video, and look out for any updates. And please don't hesitate to share this with your fellow stylists, and even if the person is not a hairstylist, and if they are a small business owner, this also relates to them, even though I focus pretty much on the beauty industry. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.